Brewers deal. Brewers stadium deal
Woo!
agreed to yesterday, and there's some breaking news this morning about the Brewers, Greg Bach.
Yes, indeed. Coming off of MLB, my app here, it says that by Adam McKelvey, the Brewers promote Pat Murphy to manager. So the Brewers have a manager now. That is the longtime bench coach of former manager Craig Counsell. He has been promoted, so he will be taking the big job, wearing the big hat. And so I mean, he knows the organization, which is good. And a bench coach is the right hand to the manager.
Okay.
So
he's been way
Yeah.
involved in the organization
and making decisions and helping with all those things, helping with scouting and whatnot. And also another announcement too that is in this article is the fact that former Milwaukee Brewers infielder Ricky Weeks will be returning to the team as an associate manager. And so he's back in Milwaukee, and
That's
he's going to
pretty
be helping.
cool. I knew I recognized his name when I saw this story break.
Yeah. So some big news for the Brewers. Let's, I'm going to, the fingers are crossed. The heart is full of hope. I'm going to, we were talking to Joe Zepecki yesterday.
Yes.
Joe Zepecki, if you're listening to this, my heart is full of hope, and I'm here to, I'm excited. Pitchers and catchers report in February. I'm here for it.
Big Brewers fan, Greg Bach, very happy on the news. Do you think that's a good move, putting Pat Murphy in that spot?
I think it's a smart move because personally, I feel promoting from within, especially, with Craig Counsell, they knew there was a chance he would leave. So I don't think it didn't seem like the Brewers were doing a lot of scouting on that end.
Right.
If they did, it didn't leak. But to promote from within, I think this is a good thing. I think you get a guy in there who's familiar with the team, with the decision-making, and the managerial mind that is Craig Counsell. And he can take some of those and then put his own spin on it. And bringing someone in like Ricky Weeks, he's got in on the team as well. He's probably got buy-in. He wants to see this team succeed. I think these are good moves. Now, will it last more than a season or two? I don't know.
He's only signed a 3-year deal.
Yeah, and we'll see. So, like I said, fingers crossed, heart full of hope. Can't wait for opening days.
Choosing optimism.
Yes, it's way better.
Another deal involving the Brewers, of course. Governor Evers yesterday announcing he will sign 2 bills that spends about $500 million to fix AmFam Field and extend the Brewers lease through 2050. States kicks in $365.8 million over 27 years. Milwaukee County and the city of Milwaukee, $135 million, and the Brewers, $150 million. I still think I still think they should have kicked in more money. I do.
Yeah.
I just do.
I don't think I don't totally disagree with that as well, but I also believe that we could have alleviated these problems with Governor Evers' original plan, and
which was pulling money from the surplus, right? Because we still have $7 billion.
$292 million out of the $7 billion surplus, putting it in an account, as Evan Goyke talked to us about a month or two ago, letting that accrue interest and making those renovations over time, and then that money will grow at a fast pace, paying for it, and it's surplus money. It's not coming off the back of the taxpayers of any of the counties, specifically Milwaukee County.
Right.
But nope, we couldn't do that. So then the Republicans came in, and the lawmakers in Madison were like, how about $600 million? And Milwaukee, you'll be triple taxed. I mean, it just, to me, that's reckless spending, and it's antithetical to what they stand for as far as fiscal responsibility. I mean, I feel like I don't disagree with you. The Brewers should have paid more.
I think they just got a sweet deal.
But if they weren't going to, I think what Governor Evers proposed back, 3 months ago?
Yeah.
That was the best way to do it. And the only reason why it didn't go through, because it was Governor Evers' idea. And that's sad.
Oh, it's very sad.
Yeah.
And just indicative of, if I can't make you look good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do anything to make the other side look good, which both sides have to get over. It's really,
yes.
Democrats and Republicans both.
Yes.
It can't be, I'm not going to sign on to this measure because that's going to give you a win.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that from either side. That's not what we need.
Nope, never. And when they do that kind of thing, it's us, the people who suffer.
Yep. There's no question about it. There is no question about it. I think also what probably helped push it over the finishing line was they capitulated, the Republicans capitulated to allow two representatives from Milwaukee, correct, to
I
sit
was
on this board
yeah.
that's going to oversee that. That took a lot of chutzpah, I thought, to say, "Yep, we're going to triple tax the residents of the city and the county of Milwaukee, but we're not going to allow you any direct involvement with this deal."
Is it really off brand though for like the constant, whether it's Milwaukee County, Racine County, any county that has a city that didn't vote for them to not punish them in some way they could,
Shape or form.
yeah. That's just the way they do it.
It's got to stop, my
Yep.
friends. It's got to stop.
Mhm.
It's just it's childish. And speaking of childish,
What?
in the next half hour when Kristin joins us at 10:33, we're going to do the good, the bad, and shouldn't there be a window here? And there were some really childish things happening yesterday in our U.S.
Oh
Congress.
my god, amongst adults.
Yeah, well, ostensibly they're adults. Now
Theoretically.
theoretically they're adults. I really question how they got elected. With it's I thought we had gotten past the the knuckle dragging mouth breathers, but apparently physical fights now are the mature way to deal with things.
Yeah, it's I think well, we'll talk about it more when we come back, but it was I think I watched those clips 15, 20 times just to like,
Try and wrap your head around that this
yeah,
is reality.
yeah, that's where we live, and all of a sudden, just you know what? That's just bully bro dudes, just bully bro doing how they do.
Well, I know there's some disappointment, and there are people who certainly think that we should not be shelling out this much money for an entertainment venue that a lot of people don't utilize, and others see the Brewers as a very important part of the state economy. So if you want to check in on the Brewers deal, 844-967-2789, 844-96.
Party.
And then coming up, an update on the Bird of the Century contest that was going on in New Zealand. You may have heard us talking about this a couple of weeks ago on the show, and it's a wonderful, wonderful result. So stay with us. You are listening to As Goes Wisconsin, and you're listening on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Nett there in for Kristin Brey. Greg Bach with me in studio. Nice job, Calvin, on the board with that bumper music. We're going to get to the results of the Bird of the Century contest that was held in New Zealand. The results were announced today. Right now, though, we're taking your calls and your comments at 844-967-2789 about the stadium deal that was agreed to yesterday that is now moving on to Governor Evers' desks, and he says he will sign them. Cindy from Appleton is on the line. Good morning, Cindy. I have a feeling I know where you're going to come down on this.
Yeah, because I'll tell you something. We have, again, put sports and entertainment as a priority over our people. I mean, we have homeless children. We have homeless vets. We have a broken prison system. Our education system is going to hell in a handbasket. We have child care issues. We have children who don't have meals, and the Republicans want to take meals away. And when we have Medicare for all, then I say, okay, we have affordable home issues. And we want to put all this money into a sports arena, entertainment arena. That should be our last priority, not our first priority. It just maddens me.
It is an enormous amount of money, Cindy. There's no question about it. And when you list off all the things like that, because you're not wrong. You're not wrong about those issues needing attention and needing some funding. So I feel where you're coming from, but this just always feels like one of those inevitabilities that a sports team wants a new stadium or wants more money for upgrades, and eventually every community just capitulates.
Yeah, and I want better roads. I don't want PFAS in my water, but that doesn't matter.
Appreciate your call, Cindy. Thank you very much. 844-967-2789, 844-967-2789. If you want to check in, our friend John from the Falls on the text line. Good morning, everybody. My heart was full of hope as well until I heard lawmakers are passing this Brewers deal. How is this a great deal for taxpayers when the team only pays $1.2 million a year in rent but gets $4 million a year for naming rights to a stadium they don't own and tens of millions of dollars in parking fees for parking lots they also don't own. If the stadium district had been getting this revenue the whole time, we could have made these upgrades with no cost to the taxpayers whatsoever. Taxpayers taking it in the shorts on this one.
I mean, that's kind of just how it is. I mean, who will stand up to one of these sports teams? Which city, which municipality, what state, what county will do that finally and say no? And if you don't like it,
We're
goodbye.
leaving.
But the government says, see ya. I mean,
well, and I when this whole discussion began, I think we talked too about who wants to be the elected official that loses the team.
I mean, that's the other thing too,
right?
And also, you know, while I don't disagree with what Cindy is saying, you know, these things don't happen one at a time. There's definitely ability to take care of the roads at this. You know, you talk about legislation. We're talking about legislation regarding childcare, mortality, food, all those things. I don't think it's a lineup one at a time. We take care of this, we take care of that. You can take care of all those things. I do think it's not the most important thing. And as other, whether they're pundits, reporters were saying, this isn't something that has to happen right now. We had time, but of course they turned it into something and they had to fix it, and it wasn't a fiscally responsible fix. And at the end of the day, those kids are still going to go hungry, and arts programs are still going to get cut, and people are trying to ban books. So we do what we can. I don't know. It's
tough. It is. It's really, really difficult and disappointing. And it would be nice if we could see some action with that $7 billion that we're sitting on and use that money instead of just for tax cuts.
It's
because we have other pressing needs, as Cindy pointed out. All right, we're going to move on. Bird of the century, Greg Bach.
Me? I'm the bird of the century.
The campaign has ended.
Sorry, I thought I was.
The campaign has ended, and we want to congratulate. I had to sound this out phonetically. We want to send congratulations to the Puteki. The
Puteki Teki.
Puteki Teki?
It's Puteki Teki.
Is it?
It's Puteki Teki.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Puteki Teki is now the bird of the century in New Zealand, and we can largely thank comedian John Oliver for that.
For so many things.
Oh, for so very many things. He featured the bird on one of his Last Week Tonight's episode and encouraged people to vote for this particular bird because you could vote provided all you needed was a valid email address. You didn't have to live in New Zealand. You didn't have to be around. So Oliver and the show put up billboards called Lord of the Wings in the New Zealand capital of Wellington, Paris, Tokyo, London, Mumbai, and Manitowoc,
Wisconsin.
The vote tally today, according to this organization that put on this contest, the group received more than 350,000 verified votes, more than 6 times the previous record of 56,700 votes set in 2021. And in fact, the response was so good, the campaign temporarily crashed the voting verification system.
Did you hear what he did on the Tonight Show?
Oh, did he wear a bird costume?
He dressed up like a Puteki Teki. And when they asked him about all the signs, the way he just said, like Paris, Mumbai, Wellington, and Manitowoc, Wisconsin.
We got to get that clip.
Yeah, I'll find that clip.
We have to get that clip. The contest for Bird of the Year, it's usually Bird of the Year. This was Bird of the Century, has had some controversies in the past. In 2020, election supervisors found 1,500 fraudulent votes for a spotted kiwi.
Stop the steal! Stop the steal!
And 2 years ago, the contest was won by a bat.
That's a bird?
That was allowed because it's considered part of the bird family by the indigenous Maori. So they were really delighted with all the attention that this brought.
Yeah. Even
though it was America basically interfering with the election of another country.
I mean, prove it. I think this was I'm just going to say this right now on the show. Mark it for whatever you want. I think this was Antifa. I think this was the corrupt
But,
FBI
well, informants within
and
the FBI,
and
probably.
miserable Joe Biden coming in trying to steal the freedoms of other people. The Pateki Techie is not. It's birds aren't even real, Jane.
Oh, that's right.
They're
There's a-
nothing but robots. They're
Oh.
just spying for the corrupt FBI and CIA.
Birds aren't real as a whole deep dive on the internet. If you want to go, if you have lots of hours to kill and you want to go down that path.
No, thank you.
Okay. Stick around. Coming up next, Kristin Brey will be joining us from home. She's been home for, is Frankie Lou 2 months old?
No, she's a
Not yet.
month and a half.
Month and a half. We'll check in with the new mom and do a round of the good, the bad, and shouldn't there be a window here? And then coming up after 11 o'clock, Anastasia Esther is our colleague here at Civic Media. She's also a producer, and she was at the March for Israel yesterday in Washington. She will be joining us at 11:06. I hope you can stay with us. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Matnair in for Kristin Brey. Greg Bach with me in studio. Calvin on the board. And joining us on our StreamYard, Frankie Free is mom Kristin Brey. Good morning, my friends. First day without the baby. How's it going?
It's weird. It's
I
very
bet.
weird.
Don't you feel like you misplaced her somewhere or something?
No, I know exactly where she is, but it's more weird of just having the brain capacity to not be trying to do two things at once. Because, up until today, at any given moment when I have the moment to do anything except take care of her, knowing that that is a ticking time bomb until I have to go take care of her. And so the fact that I have until 4 p.m. today to actually power through a to-do list is wild. And as I pinged you guys right before I got on, I also, as I've been very honest on this show with my ADHD, today is the first day I took half an Adderall since February. So we'll see how that fares.
You're going to be bouncing off the walls by 1 o'clock this afternoon.
Potentially. We'll see if it was a good idea or a bad idea. But as far as actually being able to have time to focus, I was like, I wonder if this will help me or hurt me. But I'll let you know next week.
Well, because really, when you're with the baby, it's every 2 to 3 hours that she either needs to be fed, right, or changed, or she's waking up from a nap, or so you can't really get too involved in anything before you have to drop what you're doing.
Yes.
She just froze.
Maybe the Adderall kicked in.
Yes, she is frozen.
Do you want to talk smack about Kristin right now? See if she can hear us?
I don't know if she can hear us or not. All I know is that she's frozen. Maybe she'll try and call in.
Okay.
I will send her a message.
I can't even imagine what it must be like that first time you're I don't want to say handing your baby over. That seems a little, but like
But that's got to be exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the baby went to they're sharing a nanny.
Yes.
And so Frankie Lou went to the nanny today for the first time, and it's just gotta be so weird.
Almost as weird as seeing Kristin's frozen face on StreamYard.
She is still frozen. I think I'm gonna remove. There we go. Okay, we'll try this again. Just a reminder, coming up at 11:06, we're going to be joined by Anastasia Esther, who is not only our colleague and a producer here at As Goes Wisconsin, but she was also an attendee at yesterday's March for Washington. So she will be joining us at 11:06 to give us an update about that. I've read different crowd sizes, but it was certainly upwards of 100,000 people. It was huge. All right, she's back. You're back.
Don't know what that was, but technology never is the most reliable. But anyways, yes. So Frankie is we're doing this once a week in the attempt to have a day off, to also practice what it's going to be like once we're back to work, and what the routine's like, and how much milk we have to prepare, and things that have to get packed. And so so far so good. The nanny has not called me saying I can't get this baby to stop crying. So
well, that's good.
Win there.
Definitely a win there. Well, and I have a whole new appreciation. I stopped by to see you on Saturday, and I have a whole new appreciation for women who breastfeed, and the amount of preparation and the amount of work it is, especially if you're going back to work or sending them off to daycare, right?
Yeah, the pumping, because truthfully, I would say my experience so far, I don't want to speak for anyone else, because breastfeeding came pretty naturally for us as far
Mhm.
as like I was making enough milk, she was latching well, and that's not a given for everyone, right? Some people
Right.
have a lot of issues breastfeeding.
Absolutely.
If you can be with your baby all the time, breastfeeding is, and all of those other things work. I find breastfeeding to be way simpler because when it comes to pumping, the amount of things you have to wash and
Yeah.
sanitize, and you can't mix, if things are refrigerated, you can't mix like just pumped milk with the refrigerated milk. You have to refrigerate the stuff that you just pumped before you can add it together. And then you're freezing things and you have to watch like how long things. So it's like, and then sometimes we mix in formula, but if it's formula, you can only keep that for 24 hours versus breast milk is 4 days. Like it's all of these different
Wow.
things beyond just like sticking a kid on your boob. But you can't, if you're going to work, obviously your kid needs to eat, but more importantly, you also need to be pumping all day to be able to make milk for that kid to eat the next day, and also
Sure.
so that you can keep your supply up. And there's just a lot more things that have to happen when you're pumping. And even if you're using formula, it's still the same. It's still the same sanitizing,
Right.
expiration date, like times and stuff like that you have to think about. That is a lot of work on top of, what the most quote unquote natural is, just be able to be with your kid all the time, which is not feasible for a
No,
lot of people.
for most people, actually. Well, you look great. The baby, when I saw her over the weekend, looks adorable. How old is she now?
She is 7 weeks tomorrow,
She's 7 weeks
and
tomorrow.
she's over 10 pounds. So, well,
Yay.
she was itty bitty when she came out. She is gaining weight fast. And she's also, I don't know if I said this, did I tell everyone that she's in the 95 percentile for height?
Shocker.
Yeah, I think, yeah, right.
Shocker. It's going to be like that.
She's got that Bry length.
I'm telling you, she's going to, at 11, she's going to go from like, a regular 11-year-old size to being 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
It's going to be, zoom.
She's going to go from point guard to center.
Yeah, exactly. In probably 3 days.
Yeah.
All right. Since you are here, we are going to have another round of the good, the bad, and this time it's shouldn't there be a window here? We will get to that at the end. Start off with the good, though. Assembly Bill 541. We just talked to Benjamin Garbedian about this. He is with the Institute for Reforming Government. He was here on Monday to talk about this. This essentially removes barriers to mental health care access by allowing out-of-state providers to practice in Wisconsin via telehealth technology. So they don't have to be licensed within the state, but they do have to be licensed in the state where they're practicing. Their license has to be in good standing, and they have to give the patient contact information for their credentialing in case there's ever a complaint. So this passed the assembly yesterday, which is good news.
I think
I
that's
think
great news.
it is good news. It's the year of mental health, right? And we talk about this so much, and that we don't have enough mental health resources. And so this is, and certainly lots of deserts. And if you live in rural parts of the state, it's really hard to set up an appointment with a provider.
But I also just think, when we think about the different professions that you need to be licensed in yours, you need to be licensed. So, and the difference, the only one to me, and someone can make the argument for a different one that makes sense of why you need to be licensed in your state and you can't necessarily practice in other states, is law. Because the laws are actually different in each state, right? Like if you're a divorce
Sure.
lawyer in Wisconsin, that's very different than what the divorce laws are in New York or any other state, right? And I don't, someone can tell me if there's something I'm not thinking about. But when it comes to medical practice or mental health, psychology, therapy practices, I don't feel like that changes state to state. Like there may be different
Slightly
laws,
different, right?
like as far as like maybe like must report type laws, as far as like things that get said in a therapy session. But for the most part, I don't know how much what you do with a patient or a client changes with mental health or medical practices in comparison to a legal and a lawyer, like what a lawyer would do. And so this makes a lot of sense to me, and it feels kind of archaic in that these laws of you have to be licensed in the state that you practice in is like before Zoom was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was a voice vote, which is It's unfortunate in a way because we have no way of knowing who voted against it because there were some votes against it. And I have heard rumblings that there were Democrats who voted against it, which would be disappointing because I just find that disappointing. Again, we talked about this before you joined us, Kristin. Is this just a case of we can't give the other side a win because this was a Republican sponsored measure?
Could be, probably.
They got
I mean, I feel like there's as much as I think there's more vindictiveness and than we always want to admit as far as just getting the short end of the stick and sometimes not always wanting to play nice.
Yeah.
As much as people talk about getting things done, I think
we're still petty people, aren't we?
Not all of us, but some of us, yes.
Some of us are petty people. All right, moving on to the bad. Wow, huffing and puffing and shoving. Oh my, unbelievable stuff yesterday in Washington. Ousted GOP House Speaker Kevin McCarthy reportedly shoved Republican Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee in the back while passing him in the Capitol. And Burchett is one of the 8 who voted against or voted to oust Speaker McCarthy. So, Calvin, I believe we have a little clip. Burchett says he took a direct shot to the kidneys, and McCarthy with a reply.
It was a clean shot to the kidneys. You just don't expect a guy who was at one time 3 steps away from the White House to hit you with a sucker punch in the hallway.
No, I would not elbow him. I would not hit him in a kidney. Run and hit the guy. I did not kidney punch him. I did not shoot anything like that.
You didn't shove him.
No.
Well, there was a reporter there from NPR who got the whole thing on tape. And she was talking to Burchett as McCarthy walked by with his security detail and allegedly, elbowed him in the back. So Burchett lunged into this reporter, and then he went chasing after McCarthy, calling him a jerk and a chicken and all that stuff. We're on the 6th grade playground.
Talk about being petty,
right?
Yeah.
But why are we surprised at this? Didn't McCarthy and Gates almost get in a fist fight? McCarthy almost got in a fist fight with someone that long ago.
I think it was Representative Swalwell.
Oh, you're right.
Who's a Democrat? Who's a Democrat? And then there was one more during a hearing between the UAW in a committee. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, a Republican from Oklahoma, called the president of the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, a thug and threatened him to a fight. Let's take a listen to this.
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big
No,
guy.
no, stop it.
Is that your solution?
Every pull it. No, sit down. Sit down. Okay.
That's Bernie Sanders is breaking this up. Bernie Sanders is going, you're a U.S. senator. Sit down. What's wrong with you?
And women are too emotional.
Yes.
But I was gonna make that same point, but then I remember that there was a fight between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Bobo earlier this year, also on the House floor. So, like, I don't know if women always have a leg to stand on either when it comes to where our politics are these days.
Yeah. It's just so. Mark Wayne Mullen was upset with O'Brien because apparently they've been verbally sparring back and forth on Twitter, and he's got a big mouth and blah 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 blah. And so so he wanted to go out, outside the walls of Congress and have a
settle it like men.
Settle it like manly men. And then appeared on a right-wing podcast, Calvin, and mentioned this tactic when he is in a fight.
By the way, I'm not afraid of biting. I will bite.
Biting?
I'll bite 100%. Yeah. I'm in a fight. I'm going to bite. I'll do anything. I mean, I'm not above it. And I don't care where I bite, by the way. It just is going to be a bite.
I'm not even going to ask any further questions on that. I think that basically speaks for itself.
Are we pulling hair too?
1, how many fights has this guy been in? 2, how many times has he bit someone? 3, is he up to date in his shots? That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Like the way he confidently is like, I don't care. I will definitely bite, and I will definitely bite anywhere. It's like, wait, what?
I was saying to Jane that nothing deflates at 2 men trying to be all manly than them having to not swear and be like, get your butt up. No, you get your butt up. Like, what are we, toddlers? What is this? What's going on here?
I mean, the next thing is be like, my dad can beat up your dad. That's that's the next logical step in this kind of fighting rhetoric.
All right. When we come back, the good, the bad, and shouldn't there be a window here? You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin. Stay with us. We're on the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning and welcome to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Matnair in for Kristin Brey. She is here. You can see her on the stream if you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. Greg Bach with me in studio. Calvin on the board. You can always check in if you want to call or text at 844-967-2789, 844-96.
Party.
Thank you, Greg Bach. All right, moving on from the good, the bad. We move on to, shouldn't there be a window here? Picture this, fellow travelers. October 4th, 2023, a plane is heading to the U.S. from London with only 11 crew and 9 passengers on board. It's a single-aisle aircraft, an Airbus 321. It can seat 170, but this small group belonged to some kind of tour company that has not yet been identified, so they're the only ones on board. These 11 crew members and 9 passengers. Everyone is seated in the middle of the cabin, just ahead of the exits over the wings. So the plane is climbing. They're at 13,000 feet, and one of the passengers mentions to a crew member, it seems a lot colder and noisier in here than it should be. So the crew member walks towards the back of the plane and notices a window seal flapping in the breeze on the left side of the cabin and walks over there and finds the window had slipped down. There's no window.
No.
They're climbing at 13,000 feet. The crew member said the noise was loud enough to damage your hearing. As the plane hit 14,000 feet, the pilots reduced speed and stopped the ascent. An engineer and co-pilot went back to take a look at the window, and they agreed that, yeah, we should probably turn around immediately. Oh my God. So after 36 total minutes of flying time, the plane landed safely back at the airport. The plane remained pressurized normally, but once they got on the ground and looked at it, they found a second window pane was missing, a third was dislodged, and a fourth appeared to be protruding slightly from its frame. They found one of the window panes shattered on the runway.
How does that even happen?
Well, and this is the thing, you guys. They say the windows may have been damaged by high-power floodlights that had been used during a filming the day before the flight. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Floodlights damaged
windows on a plane?
I didn't do well in science, so I really have to feel like I have to believe them.
I am not an airspace person
astrophysicist
whatsoever.
Yeah.
No.
Me neither, but just the fact.
Did not go to the air show this year. We talked to one person there, but learned very little about planes from that one conversation.
Is there someone here who could tell me how light can damage glass? Anyone?
I just can't even imagine, though, how terrifying that must have been.
How many people were on the plane?
There were 11 crew members and 9 passengers. So it's a really small group on a plane that seats 170 people. But they're all in the middle, and can you imagine how cold it was? They're at 13,000 feet.
Can you imagine how? I mean, like the fact that they're not saying like, one window fell out, the other one shattered, and also a man relieved himself on the floor of the plane because he was like, there's no sense of freak out from any of the passengers. I would have been terrified isn't the word, because you're beyond terrified at that point. You're like, oh, this is how I've seen this movie. We're going to get sucked out a window hole.
Exactly. And then
it's so funny. Go ahead.
I had to look up. So as their commercial aircraft typically hit their cruising altitude in the first 10 minutes of a flight, as they're climbing, they're going at about 280 miles an hour as you're climbing to your cruising altitude. That's up to 10,000 feet, and then up to 345 miles an hour. So you're really clipping along as you're climbing. And the fact that they had to send an engineer and a co-pilot back there to say, yeah, we probably should turn back. You can't. Of course you have to turn back. You can't breathe after 20,000 feet.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because it's one thing, it's very obvious when the door is open, right? That like, oh, we're going to get sucked out of this thing. But had it been like just one window, would they have been like, oh, we can power through this? Is it the fact that like, what is the threshold of broken windows on an airplane that you can actually be okay with versus the immediate like, no, we're turning around, we got to go back?
I don't think you can't continue on that, because most planes cruise, and again, if I'm wrong, please let me know because I have no background in aerospace or aeronautics or anything. But don't most planes cruise at like 35,000 feet?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
seems to be pretty much the standard
They're
altitude.
usually about 5 to 7 miles up.
Right. And
Yeah.
and again, you can't breathe after 20,000 feet without
Well, we
oxygen.
just would have waited for someone to die then,
without
Jane. There's your
pressure.
marker.
And now you have me thinking, Kristin, about if you keep going higher, I bet somebody could get sucked out of that window.
I don't know. Those windows aren't very big. A baby could. You think
Hey,
you're getting sucked out of a window, Jane? You think
I'm
I'm
not-
getting sucked out of a window?
I'm not saying
I'm definitely not.
it wouldn't be.
I'll plug it if anything, and
No.
you're fine. You're safe.
It wouldn't be a comfortable exit.
It's fine. I've lived a good life.
Let's look at it like that.
Kelvin put in the chat. He said the lights must have been super hot. That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
These floodlights.
Like they melted the actual frame of the plane, or melted the windows themselves and warped them in some manner.
Well, if you're doing traveling for the holidays, I hope
hold
you have
on.
a
I'm
wonderful.
canceling my flight to
I hope
Atlanta
you
next
have a
year.
Have a wonderful trip. Make sure
Yeah,
you check
it's-
that window shade.
It's so interesting because in reality, we know that flying is safer than driving, right? Like as far
Considerably.
as accidents that happen. But there's still something when you hear these stories, and I think it's just because it's so unnatural to be 7 miles in the air and doing this thing that 100 years ago we were basically just starting to figure out, as far as like humans are not supposed to be in the sky. That when we hear these stories, they're so much more terrifying than a car accident.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because it happens more rarely and car accidents happen all the time, but in reality, rationally, we should be more afraid of driving than flying, and yet we're not. Like
We're
these
not.
are freaky stories that make you do what Greg just did. It's like, do I want to fly?
Yeah. Can I get my points back, please?
Well, we're just about out of time. You have all kinds of things. What's your first thing on your to-do list for today?
Oh, the first thing on my to-do list is a bunch of finance stuff, like credit card cleanup and some swapping of bills and closing of things and stuff that is just, it's one of those things that just sits on the to-do list forever because you don't want to do it. But once you actually do it, you're like, well, that did not take that long. Why did it take me so long to do this?
Procrastination.
It's a powerful thing.
It absolutely is. Well, it's so good to see you. Give the baby a squeeze from us. We will see you next Wednesday at 10:33, and enjoy your day, and try not to freak out with the baby at the
I'll let you
nannies.
know how it goes.
All
All
right,
right, bye
we'll
guys.
see you soon. Stay with us. When we come back, Anastasia Esther will be with us. We're going to talk about yesterday's March for Israel in Washington. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network.